Hi, this is Teddy, and today you're listening to Paulette Jordan in Idaho on Two Broads Talking Politics. Let's flip the Senate.
Are you listening?
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I am on today with Paulette Jordan, who is running for Senate from Idaho. Hi, Paulette.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. So I've been following you for a little while now. I was really excited when you were running for governor in 2018 and was thrilled to see you running this year for Senate. This is such an important Senate election this year. But I just wanted to sort of start by talking a little bit about Idaho. I think people look at the map and think, oh, Idaho is just a red state. But there's some really progressive pockets within Idaho. And I feel like people there are fairly sort of independent-minded in terms of what they're looking for in politics.
Oh, absolutely.
Could you sort of talk a little bit about what you see going on there?
Yeah, a lot of folks are like me. They're very independent, and I'm Indigenous. I'm a mother of two sons in North Idaho. And a lot of our people really are more about values, and we vote for the person, not the party. So the vast difference is, for many of us, if we have access to a candidate and we get to hear, what he or she stands for, it really makes a tremendous difference. And there was never, and to be very plain, there's never been a voice like mine that's ever ran in Idaho. So, a part of the challenge is to get to as many people as possible to express who you are and what you're about and what principles or values you stand on, because that's really what's unique to, I'd say, the culture in our state, especially for a very rural state. And I'm rural. I grew up in the countryside, and, at the times, every time I get to the opportunity, I will go out to meet with farmers or ranchers and people in the rural sectors in my community. And once I talk to them, they'll see that we have way more in common than not. And even if they've inherited the R, which, this is one of the reasons why Idaho is seemingly, vast majority red or Republican. It's just because a lot of people, they inherit that R and they think it is, what it stood for maybe many generations ago, but it's no longer what it stands for today. And they're starting to see, the difference, that it's more corporate leaning and it's about just helping the privileged few instead of the people. But now we have so many more independents and more people who have left the party. There's been this civil war, within the Republican Party, where you have the far right and, of course, those who consider themselves more moderate, who, they feel that they've been isolated or pushed out of the party in some ways, and because it doesn't serve them well as far as their values go. They're starting to see that whether they're independent or Democrat, they're starting to opt into where the Democratic Party here in Idaho is going, which is broadening its atmosphere to include libertarians and independents. And there are more people that are just going to more the middle, saying I'm unaffiliated, and are frustrated with both sides. And I'm sort of there where I feel that that's where my community, we tend to just be nonpartisan and about the solutions. But in this case, because we have such a major battle that's really looming ahead of us, and facing COVID and the financial crisis, and of course the climate crisis, we really need to start building up the party for what it is. And it's, like I said, all inclusive, but we have to start standing up and choosing the side of the people. So while, Idaho may seem red at this point, I see so many opportunities, because we have Ada County, where Boise, which is the largest city and also the capital, that is growing more and more progressive. In 2018, we shifted that needle more to the left, and I like to say more to the center, to be more pragmatic and sensible. But as people are growing to be more aware and conscious of the situation or our environment today, they're starting to see that there's just so much corruption going on. And because we're a one-party supermajority system, it's so imbalanced that it's starting to take hold of people's lives, and, it's really getting into our homes. And because of COVID, it's really waking people up to see how much leadership matters in this day and age, how much politics is involved and ingrained in your daily life, And I've always said that, whether you engage with politics, politics is going to engage with you. So you got to get involved. And now we're seeing how important that even our Latino districts are, where we have a growing number of not just migrant farm workers, but Latinos are, in our Hispanic areas are growing. And as that number continues to grow, many of our Latino or Hispanic voters are starting to become more activated and getting involved and getting registered to vote. And unfortunately, like recently, as of the last few days, we have seen voter disenfranchisement hitting our communities hard. But that also goes to show you that this is where Idaho is just ready to change. And Idaho can be flipped. And we are mostly women. We have a 51% women, if not more. We have more young people turning of age. And of course, because the indigenous and the Latino communities are looking to be activated, that would even sway our state a great deal. And really, because more people are in the middle, because there are roughly 30% now who say that they're unaffiliated or sitting on the fence, these folks have said that they want to know who, as far as in this U.S. Senate race, who represents them best. So it's really up to us as candidates to get to those folks, to get them off the fence, to understand that, hey, we're here to represent you, and especially myself, being from Idaho. And this is our greater advantage, is being from Idaho and being even a gun owner and a mother, and being pro-environment and pro-woman and pro-LGBTQ and pro-business. We have far more to offer than my opposition. And, so we don't even have to speak to the negatives. We can speak to all the positives that we offer. But I think that's why we're going to be able to flip the state.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting looking through your platform, and you describe as people first, which is so important. But, talking about things like fiscal accountability, is the thing that for so long Republicans were sort of trying to lay claim to. But I think it really makes sense in the way you talk about it, that fiscal accountability is something that's going to affect all of us, and it really is about putting people first. Can you talk some about those issues that you're focusing on and that you see the people really responding to around the state?
Yes, after people, we've been isolated because of the coronavirus pandemic, people started to see, sort of the reality of, what happens if our leadership isn't looking after us, if we're not receiving relief and support at the local level. And, I really appreciate those folks who have hunkered down and started to realize that, it's not about the political system anymore. It's about lives and protecting our local community. And for me, I definitely have experienced this and seen some of the harshest stories and have talked to people throughout our state. And, it is very unfortunate that many are, facing eviction or are food insecure. And because there are so many who are even on the waiting list, waiting to get into homeless shelters, we have people that are 2 years out waiting to get into homeless shelters, and it's extremely unfortunate. But yet, at the time that we face today, we have an opportunity. We are stepping into this race to essentially serve and protect all our people, and that's why we offer people first policies, because we see that in our opposition, they essentially serve the corporations, and it's never been really a big secret. We always knew that they've been serving the corporations, especially now after the first CARES Act went on, the first round of COVID relief funding really served more so the billionaires and their corporate friends, and really very little of that money came back into the pockets of the people. So they're starting to feel it. And in that process, it is my hope and desire to have people wake up and see this, because they know that they have people at the national level who are not looking out for us and not trying to serve our communities. So, but that people first policy is essentially saying that, I'm here to look after you, and fighting against the corporations at the national level to ensure that resources comes to our people first, meaning we protect the Affordable Care Act, ensuring that health care for all is essentially preserved. We want to serve and protect health care for women, or access to health care for women. And now it's even more critical for our people to get involved because of the fact that we have a nominee that is looking to put access to women's rights and including healthcare on the chopping block. My opposition has certainly supported that and said he wishes to be as conservative as possible, and that means limiting it. That like his votes have stated, speaking for itself, that he would wish to see us roll back into the 1950s and even pre-ERA, Equal Rights Amendment, to see that women certainly are not treated fairly here. And of course, people first, meaning education. Our state is nearly 50th in the country when it comes to education, and we have to ensure that we are fighting for our children. And that means fighting at the national level for appropriations to come back to our schools, and even honoring our teachers at the local level to give them back their dignity. And in a state like ours, we are not serving our people well in all of these capacities, even as a right to work state where people are not allowed to basically stand up for themselves and be a voice. But you can protect businesses. You can certainly see a balance in the environment and industry, and there's always a way to see balance in everything. But without that leader willing to be a voice for not just the business industry, but the environment and people at large, we're not going to see any changes in the state or this country. And so people first policy to me means being fair, being balanced, and serving our communities and ensuring that the resources come back into our community where it can best suit our needs.
So in the entire history of this country, there has never been a Native American woman in the Senate. There haven't been that many women in the Senate, period. So this isn't perhaps that surprising. And we just in 2018 elected the first two Native American women to the House of Representatives. I mean, can you talk a little bit about what that would mean to have that representation in the Senate finally in 2020?
It's huge. You look at the first peoples of this land. I stem from indigenous heritage that has been about preservation of lands and preservation of humanity, and there's always been a balance in society that way. My grandparents, both men and women, were chiefs, and they believed in an egalitarian society. So I would love to see, our way of life, our leadership style implemented into Congress today, because I see that there's an opportunity to bring our country back together, operating under this culture and idealism to see men and women being treated equally. But also, with the fact that our people, indigenous peoples, haven't been able to vote, even as late as it's in the early 1960s in this country, goes to show you, how far off we've been in terms of having the ability for this country to see what the first peoples are of this land, or the indigenous peoples are. And we have a set of value systems that are wholly unique, but really have served to promote independence and freedoms that this country is founded on. Being that this country is founded on the Iroquois Confederacy, people can see that heritage really does do a great deal of service to our land. But if we're not continuing to operate, off the same heritage, knowing that we still have to protect the environment, we still should be protecting our children's future for the next 7 generations. All of that really does adhere to what I think most people want to see today. But if we don't have the representation, then you're going to miss out on the, that style of leadership. So I think it means everything to see a Native American woman to be representative in the U.S. Senate. And you can only imagine the conversations that would change, in terms of the minute I walk in a room, being able to stand up for women's rights, or being able to stand up for, conversations for equal exchanges, even in business practices, or talking about our children's future and the environment. All of that really matters, and being a champion on all of these fronts is going to be essential to how our country is able to evolve for the next 7 generations' sake.
What are some of the things that people at home, people who are not in Idaho, can be doing to help out your campaign in these final 5 weeks?
So much. And, I'm grateful that there's so much access to technology, and people can get on the phones, they can get on the internet. For us, if they were able to see that we have an opportunity to flip our Senate seat here in Idaho, especially at this most critical time, and saving women's rights, and of course, access for LGBTQ and the environmental protections, they would be able to reach us here at Elect Paulette on social media, which is one way to stay involved and engaged. But to get involved and to participate as a volunteer, I would say please sign up at pauletteforsenate.com. Signing up on my website, pauletteforsenate.com, you can basically sign up to either make phone calls or send texts. And all of that's going to make a tremendous difference, because in a rural state like Idaho, and if you don't live here, because essentially I would ask people to do some lit dropping to help knock on doors for us. But even making calls makes a difference. If you have family or friends here, spreading the word that you are paying attention to this race helps shake even local people up who aren't paying attention to this race. And you can only imagine, how many people are not, because they're focused on, where the next paycheck is coming from and trying to keep their bills paid on time, or, whatever. And then school, families with school, they're worried about their children. There's really so much happening right now, from the financial crisis to COVID. But, if you can help us draw attention to this issue, even contributing on our website helps, because every dollar really matters in this grassroots campaign. And, because we're really solely based on people or volunteer hours, and people making small dollar donations, because it is a grassroots movement. We really are mindful of the fact that so much can really change even within these last few weeks. And people have surged, making countless donations at even small dollars, like $10, $7. But even that adds up. So I would say if you can make a small dollar donation, that helps tremendously. And if you can make calls, that's great. That would really help boost our outreach.
What does voting look like in Idaho? Are people able to vote early? Are they able to vote by mail?
They can do both. In certain counties of our state, they're starting to vote early here next week. Some as late as October 19th. But we are pushing people to not only vote early, we want them to sign up online and register at idahovotes.gov, and of course get their ballot in the mail if they can. For some, though, they're saying it's going to take some time and it would not get to them by mid-October. And they're worried about their ballot getting disqualified. So we have been pushing not only to vote early by mail, but to also consider going to find the polling location. So this is why it's so essential to develop a plan. So we make sure to remind people, what's your voting plan? And if you can ask your neighbors and friends, what's your voting plan? There's nothing evasive or invasive about that. But if you just, kind of hold people accountable that way, to know that, hey, this is really important. This election, it's the greatest election or most important election of this nation's history. And if you sit this out, you're basically allowing anyone else who you disagree with to vote for you or speak for you or tell you what you hold sacred. So it's really critical that people get involved. And that's why it's, for me, if I talk to my own relatives and friends, it's just simply to ask them in a non-invasive way to say, what's your voting plan? And, if you don't have one, do you know your polling location? Do you like to vote in person? Just know that, in your county, you only have 2 polling locations versus the 60 that you may have had in 2018. And that's happened here in Idaho. We actually had a Canyon County, which is in southern Idaho, basically being disenfranchised. And, it's the most diverse county in our state. And while my opposition is not standing up for Idahoans, I'm working to ensure that people understand that we went from 60 polling locations to just 5. And one of those polling locations is servicing over 100,000 people. And this is, again, the most diverse county in the state. So a lot of Latino and Hispanic voters that are going to be disenfranchised. And if they decide to vote, the day of, these folks are going to be waiting for hours, and hopefully not. But that's why we want to push people to understand that they can vote early or they can vote by mail. So yeah, it's going to be huge, but critical that we get the word out fast.
Yes. And do I understand that you have tried to convince your opponent to a debate, and he has not agreed to one?
Yeah, he won't debate me because he thinks Idaho is so conservative and voters can't think for themselves. He's not respecting, he's not respecting the democratic process, and he's taking all of our voters for granted. So, it's interesting because there's a presidential debate tonight, and everyone will be reminded of how important they are. And I hope that he, will consider even responding, but yet, as we pressed him, he has not responded to one debate. But that is part of the democracy. It's part of respecting people, is turning up, showing up, and not hiding, and ensuring that people understand who you are and what you stand for. And at this point, I can honestly tell you, Kelly, that he is really unclear on any issue. We don't know what he stands for, what values he serves, nothing. And he is the most evasive person you can ever meet. And because he dodges everything from the draft to any challenge from throughout his entire career. He dodges the media. He dodges every single Idahoan. This man will not ever take up an interview or a conversation. So it's really clear that he thinks that just hiding behind the R is going to save him. But we've been very clear about where we stand, and I think that's very important. So we are going to continue pushing for this debate. I don't think we're ever going to get a response, not even the common courtesy or the respect. And that's not always the case here with certain individuals like Rish, but that's the state we're in. It's unfortunate, but we have to take the high road and be better leaders by example. So we'll keep trying, and hopefully, people will see, who each candidate is and why we deserve better.
Yeah, well, so everyone listening, please make sure that you share this episode with everybody so that people can hear at least one of the candidates in the race.
Yes.
Yeah, and we will be sure to post your website and your social media on our website. So hope that people will check out your website and help out. And you have beautiful shirts and signs and things. I love the color purple that you're using. I think they're just really striking. So I also hope that people will check out the store.
Yeah, please do. And thank you so much for this opportunity. It's so wonderful to be talking to you. And I love that you're a mother and you're also getting through this time of COVID and making it happen and helping other mothers like myself.
Yeah, moms of sons, we know how to get it done, right?
Yes. Oh, you have
Yeah.
2 sons. I got to my
Yeah.
2 sons, and they're grown up fast. But
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talk about?
One of the bigger challenges that we have in our state is, my opponent, who is the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I often have pushed this because I want to make sure people understand that we have an individual who should set an example for democracies around the world. But instead, he's making a mockery of this process and even saying that a debate is not a good place for him to, quote, publish his views. But when people see that we have, and I'm sure there are other candidates out there who are evading their opponent, but it's just clear that we have folks who are not taking this process seriously. And if we have a president who is also declaring that he's going to disqualify votes the night of election, or they're going to find a way to steal this election from the people and not allow their voices to be heard, it really just tells you who these people are. And I would say that it's not only disgraceful, but it's discouraging, especially when you have those of us like myself who, I've loved this country far before it was even a country. I've been here for thousands of generations, and we want to protect this land. We want to protect its natural resources. We want to protect our children and our children's future. But being the first Indigenous woman to come into the U.S. Senate and to be able to fight for all of these great things, we are just, what I feel, weeks away from an opportunity to help change this country for the better. And it is my hope that people are watching these U.S. Senate races, especially in a state like mine that has been discounted because, we haven't seen anyone run for decades as a Democrat and win and be able to represent at this level. But there are always opportunities, for us to see these glimmering lights, and we are bringing hope and opportunity. And I know that there are a lot of young people who have been not only disenfranchised, but disserved and disregarded, including our LGBTQ community and our young women. So we have a lot of work to do, but we really are counting on people across this country to take notice and to stand with us, because in a state like ours that has a low population state, but high and land mass, we certainly have a lot of ground to cover. And any help really does a great deal of good. And so just to put that out there, because folks know that even in red states, there are many red states across this country that have turned blue or have been balanced. And that's what I'm seeking, is essentially just balance in this country, because I am not here to judge. I'm not here to point fingers or lay blame. At the end of the day, I'm just going into the role, and I just want to get down to work. And I want to be able to work with both sides of the aisle and ensure that we're doing some good for this country and trying to turn it back in the right direction, so that the corporations are no longer, having all the say, and that people, have access to their funds again, because we are fiscally accountable. And of course, I want to make sure that our women and our children are safe, that our environment is protected. And I know that all of that is at stake right now. It's all on the ballot. So come November, everything is on the chopping block. And if we don't fight and we don't continue to contribute every day, like my granddad would say, you have to make your deposit every day to see change. But if you don't make those investments, then you're not going to see any improvements. So, we have to invest every day. And if you can invest, please invest here in Idaho.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And thank you so much for stepping up and running. Your voice is so important. And I am really, really rooting for you in this election.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. I so appreciate your time and all your good work as well, shining a light on all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.